Your bug-out bag can be the smartest thing you own, or the thing that gets you hurt. It all depends on one question most people never answer honestly. Are you leaving because it's truly safer somewhere else? Or because leaving feels like action, and action feels like control? Because here's the uncomfortable truth. In a real emergency, a lot of folks don't bug out. They just wander. They burn fuel, burn energy, burn daylight, then end up stranded, thirsty, and out of options with their whole life on their back. And that's not a character flaw. It's just what happens when a plan is built on vibes instead of logistics. So let's take the fantasy out of it. This video is about the cold math of bugging out, when it's actually the right move, when it's a mistake, and how to build a plan that doesn't collapse the moment real life shows up. No action movie hero talk. Just practical survival thinking you can actually use. Let's start with the part nobody wants to hear. Most bug-out plans don't include a destination. They include a mood. People say, I'll head to the mountains, or I'll go into the national forest, or I'll just get out of the city. Okay, out to where? To what address? To whose property? With what water? With what heat? With what permission? Because the fastest way to turn yourself into a walking target is to hit the road with no clear landing spot. In stressful situations, moving without a destination is how people get trapped between problems. You're not secure at home anymore, but you're not secure anywhere else either. You're just exposed. So the first reality check is simple. If you don't have a specific place you're expected and welcome, bugging out isn't a plan, it's a gamble. Now here's the second reality check, and this one stings. Even if you do have a destination, you might not reach it, because roads don't behave the way you think they will. Everyone assumes they'll evacuate in a nice clean line, like a well-organized parade. That's not how it goes. Not when fear hits. Not when gas stations run dry. Not when one accident blocks an artery, and suddenly you've got a parking lot that stretches for miles. Most people have had one worse traffic day in their life, leaving a stadium, a holiday weekend, a storm evacuation. Now take that feeling of being trapped and remove the safety net. No quick detour, no reliable gas, no, we'll just stop at the next exit. No guarantee your destination is even reachable. And here's the brutal twist. The longer you sit, the more you lose. Fuel drops, water gets warm, stress climbs, kids need bathrooms, tempers flare, people make dumb moves. Then the car becomes a problem, because a car is only an advantage while it moves. Once it stops, you've basically turned your escape plan into a metal box full of supplies that everyone can see. So if your bug-out plan depends on roads staying functional, you don't have a bug-out plan. You have a normal commute with better branding. Now let's talk about the third reality check. Your body. This is where most plans quietly fall apart. A lot of bug-out bags are built like they're meant for a catalog photo. They're heavy, loaded, and proudly optimized for every possible scenario. But your shoulders don't care how proud you are. Try this thought, not as a scare tactic, just as a truth test. If you throw a 35-pound pack on your back and walk for 2 hours, how do you feel? Not could you do it once. Could you do it again tomorrow and the next day, while stressed? Sleeping badly, eating less, and dealing with weather. Most people's bodies break down in predictable ways. Feet go first. Hot spots become blisters. Blisters become open wounds. Then infection becomes a real concern because you're not in a clean environment and you don't have a clinic down the street. After that, it's knees, hips, lower back, then dehydration. Then decision-making starts getting sloppy. And sloppy decisions in the field are expensive. Even in normal times, experienced hikers get in trouble. People get lost, get hurt, underestimate weather, and end up needing rescue. Now remove rescue. No search teams. No hospital that's running normally. No easy help. Suddenly, a twisted ankle isn't annoying. It's immobilizing. A small cut isn't no big deal. It can become a serious infection if you can't clean and dress it properly. And that brings us to the quiet killer that takes people out more often than bad guys do. Exposure. Your home isn't just a building. It's a life support system you don't think about. It keeps you dry. It blocks wind. It stabilizes temperature. It gives you walls, shade, insulation, and a place where your body can recover and your immune system can do its job. When you leave that behind, you're betting your safety on thin fabric, limited gear, and your ability to stay ahead of weather. And weather doesn't negotiate. Cold slows your thinking. It makes you careless. It makes you tired in a way that feels like gravity is stronger. Heat does the opposite. It drains you. It dries you out. It makes you irritable and impulsive. It can put you into heat exhaustion faster than you expect, especially if you're pushing a pack and not drinking enough. Rain is the sneaky one. A little wet becomes a lot of wet. Wet clothes steal heat, wet gear gets heavy, wet hands lose dexterity. Then the little problems pile up and suddenly you can't do simple tasks well. So when people say, "I'll just live off the land," I always want to ask, in what weather? With what training? With what calories? With what water? Which leads to the next point. Water is the main limiter for any bug out. You can go a while hungry, you can't go long dehydrated, and it's not just thirst. Dehydration wrecks your decision making. It makes you clumsy, it makes you cranky, it makes you more likely to get hurt. A lot of people pack food like they're preparing for a picnic. Then they pack 2 tiny water bottles like the wilderness has vending machines. In the field, water is weight. Treatment takes time. Finding it takes time. And the moment you start making close enough choices like drinking questionable water because you're desperate, you can end up sick, which makes everything worse. Diarrhea in the backcountry isn't just gross, it's dehydration, it's weakness, it's the spiral. Now let's talk about the part people love to blame for everything, other people. Yes, people can be unpredictable in high-stress situations, but it's not always criminal gangs, like some action movie script. A lot of the danger comes from normal folks who are scared, exhausted, and trying to protect their own. And when you're bugging out, you advertise 3 things without saying a word. 1, you have supplies. 2, you're trying to get somewhere. 3, you're vulnerable because you're moving. That makes you more noticeable than someone who's staying put quietly. Also, the lone wolf idea is overrated. Humans survive better in groups, not because groups are perfect, but because groups allow rest, watch rotations, shared skills, and shared problem solving. If you're traveling with just your immediate family, who's watching while someone sleeps? Who's navigating while someone deals with a kid who's hungry or a parent who's limping? Even trained professionals don't operate alone for a reason. Now let's hit another thing that gets ignored until it's the whole story. Medical reality. At home, you got options. You've got clean water. You can wash a wound properly. You can keep a cut clean and dry. You can get help if it's serious. On the move, everything gets harder. Chronic conditions become bigger problems. Meds run out. Refrigeration isn't reliable. Monitoring isn't easy. Stress is higher, which makes a lot of health issues worse. And it's not only chronic conditions. A small cut can become infected. A mild fever can become dangerous if you can't manage hydration. A simple fall can ruin mobility. Kids and older adults are especially vulnerable here. Kids dehydrate faster. They regulate temperature differently. They get sick faster. Older adults often have multiple conditions that depend on consistent routines and medication. So if your bug-out plan involves long-distance travel on foot with a family that includes kids, elders, or anyone with medical needs, you need to be extremely honest about the risks. Not scared, just honest. Now here's where I'm going to flip the conversation, because the point isn't never bug out. The point is bug out is usually Plan C. Plan A, for most real scenarios, is sheltering in place. Your home is where your supplies already are. It's where your bed is. It's where your blankets are. It's where your water storage can be bigger than what fits in a backpack. It's where you have walls and a roof and familiarity. And most emergencies are temporary or localized. Power outages, storms, short-term civil unrest, water advisories, supply hiccups. Most of these don't require you to hike into the woods. They require you to get through a few days calmly while things stabilize. Sheltering in place has 3 huge advantages. 1, you can store more. 2, you can stay cleaner and safer. 3, you're not exposed. Now there are times when leaving is absolutely the right move. Wildfire, flood, chemical spill, structural danger, a direct, credible evacuation order in a fast-moving situation. That's when you don't want a dramatic wilderness plan. You want a boring, practiced evacuation plan. And that plan should look like this. Leave early. Go to a specific destination. Use normal routes if they're safe. Have backups. And aim for another safe building, not a campsite fantasy. People survive evacuations by getting out before the mass panic wave hits. The later you leave, the more chaos you drive into. So the best bug out plan is often a fast, early, boring evacuation, not a heroic march. Now let's tighten this into something you can actually use. Here's the decision framework I want you to keep. If home is safe enough to stay, you stay. If home is unsafe, you leave early to a known destination. If leaving becomes unsafe, you pivot to the nearest safe shelter option, not deeper into uncertainty. That's it. That's the spine. Now let's talk about what you build instead of a fantasy bug out. First, build home resilience, water storage, food storage, basic sanitation plan, backup lighting, a way to cook without the grid, a basic medical kit, a way to get information like an emergency radio. Your home should be so prepared that leaving feels like a downgrade, because it often is. Second, build a real community network, not a giant group chat. Real relationships. Know your neighbors. Know who has skills. Know who has a generator. Know who has tools. Know who elderly and might need help, because that's part of keeping your block stable. In most real crises, the safest neighborhoods are the ones where people coordinate instead of panic. Third, make evacuation realistic. Routes to specific destinations where you're welcome. A car that's not always on empty. A go bag that isn't a 40-pound punishment device. A plan for documents, meds, basic cash, water, and comfort items for kids. And practice it, not constantly, just enough that it's not a mystery. Fourth, invest in skills over gear. First aid basics, practical repair skills, communication habits, cooking from pantry staples, fitness that's built gradually, not all at once, because skills don't weigh anything, and they don't run out the way supplies do. Now let's talk about the myth that causes the most damage. Living off the land. That phrase sounds tough, but it's usually not real. Hunting and foraging are skills, not wishes. They take knowledge, local experience, and time. In a crisis, everyone else has the same idea, which means resources get pressured fast. The wilderness is not a pantry. It's an environment that demands you know what you're doing. So if you want to build wilderness skills, do it the right way. Practice in normal times, in your local area, in seasons you'll actually face, with real constraints, not with a romantic idea of disappearing into the trees and becoming invisible. Because you don't become invisible. You become exposed. Now, I'm going to say something that might calm you down. Preparedness isn't about becoming a survival hero. It's about avoiding the situations that require heroics. The best survival plan is the one that keeps you out of survival mode as long as possible. That means common sense. It means realistic plans. It means being honest about your fitness level, your family needs, your local geography, and your actual risks. Tornado country? Focus on tornado readiness. Wildfire country? Focus on early evacuation routes and air quality. Flood zone? Focus on water, sandbags, and quick exit plans. Winter storms? Focus on heat, food, water, and staying put. Most people get distracted by exciting scenarios and skip the boring ones that actually happen. So here's your practical takeaway. Bug out isn't your primary plan. Bug out is what you do when staying becomes more dangerous than leaving. Your real plan is to make home resilient, build local connections, and have an early evacuation route to a known place. That's what keeps your family alive, not a backpack fantasy. And if you want to test your own plan without scaring yourself, do this. Pick a weekend, turn off your breaker for 6 hours. No fridge, no internet, no microwave, no, I'll just run to the store. See what breaks first in your routine. Is it water? Is it cooking? Is it lighting? Is it boredom? Is it the kids getting restless? Then fix that one weakness. That's preparedness in real life. Not fear, not cosplay, just removing weak points one by one. Because in a real crisis, the goal isn't to be brave. The goal is to be boring, steady, and ready. And if you can do that, you won't need a heroic bug out. You'll have options. You'll have calm. You'll have a plan that holds together when the world gets loud.